The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome, Segment 1 students, to the new series. We're going to go through the nodal axis, house by house. Today we're going to explore Aries Libra, right, Kim? 1st, 7th?
Yes.
The nodal axis, Aries Libra.
Yes. And to make it simple, I've just titled this series Via the South Node, because we start with the past as we're trying to move our way forward.
Yeah.
So thank you to those who are showing up live for class. I've already started my recording, Leroy, okay?
Ditto, we're good to go. Thank you.
Okay, all right. So here we are starting a brand new series. More on that later. First of all, let's go through our housekeeping slides. Here at EAN, you can learn with us 3 different ways: our free weekly audio podcast, our Astro Library, and our multimedia course. Here's the Astro Library. This is a dozen years of worth of materials by myself and other evolutionary astrologers. You can see it's divided into 3 different sections. You can subscribe 1 month, 6 months, 12 months, or you can do a monthly recurring that can be canceled at any time. Here's our EAN multimedia course, 3 different segments, and as you can see in the middle of your screen, segments 1 and 2 are available 3 different ways: the materials only, everything physical; digital only, everything online and streaming; or you can have both. And of course, at the bottom of your screen, you can always contact Leroy Media Monk for any help you may need on your learning path. Future classes, I have these listed here. You can see where I have volunteers in case you are interested in volunteering your South Node by either sign or house. Here are the rest of the classes. And of course, with 2 volunteers, I found that, 3 screens. And then the other thing that I found as I started going through this, it's like, well, wait a minute. I needed to start with Pisces and the 12th house because the mean motion of the nodes are retrograde. So stay tuned. I'm going to ponder this one, and I may switch it here. I'm going to have to do a cough drop, everybody. My throat's been fine up until the moment I decided to talk. Excuse me a moment. Oh, Leroy, mute. Oh, you're supposed to help me with this. Okay, I'm going to mute myself.
While Kim's taking her little mini break, I just wanted to remind everybody on this call, too, as you listen to the recording as a student, we do have Mercury retrograde in Taurus, a free webinar coming up for the general public and associates at EAN. That's okay. I think it's April 25th, 6 to 8 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. We're going to do the Mercury retrograde in Taurus free webinar. So pass that along to colleagues in your Astro groups, and we'll see you online then.
Wow, that came out of the blue. My ego got triggered. South Node and Taurus, that's my throat.
Shaking you up a little bit. Yeah, that's okay. That's natural. Where is that throat chakra in
All right, everyone, I'm sorry. I'm having to do a cough drop as this just came up. So I'm decided, okay, I've already postponed class for a week, so we're going to go forward with today's class. I may switch it. We may reverse our way through the zodiac, which is how the nodes naturally revolve. Okay, hold on, I gotta get back this going. So a little bit of nodal axis astronomy. I'm going to go pretty fast because I turned out to have a lot more slides than I thought I would, and I wanted to take this series with 2 volunteers and really put some effort into chart interpretation. So thank you for allowing me to go fast. If you have any questions at any time during the class, please raise your hand or type a question out to Leroy and he'll feed it through to me. So nodal axis astronomy. The North Node and South Node are really points in space. They're not actual objects. And there are points in space where the moon's path intersects the plane of the ecliptic. The ecliptic is the sun's apparent path around the Earth, when we know through astronomy that it's actually the Earth that's revolving around the sun, and the ecliptic is the Earth's actual path. When the north node or ascending node crosses above the ecliptic, that's how it's called the north node. When the moon's path crosses below the ecliptic, we label it the south node or descending node. Here's a visual for you. All right. So here is the ecliptic, the sun's apparent path. Here is where the moon's path crosses. Oops, I'm moving in the wrong direction. Here's where the moon's path crosses above. So you get the north node. 2 weeks later, the moon's path crosses below the ecliptic, and you get the south node. And so while we look at the moon going in this direction as it goes around, these points actually reverse through the zodiac. All right? All planets have nodes, north nodes, but most of the other planets are far enough away from Earth that their north node, south node are not exactly 180 degrees apart. Only the moon's nodes are exactly 180 degrees apart because, again, moon goes around the Earth once a month. It travels fairly fast, and so it reaches each node in a 2-week time period. 2 weeks one node, 2 weeks the next node. As we said before, the nodal axis revolution precesses. That means it moves backwards around the zodiac. Its revolution is about 18.5 years. Astrologically, this reversing of the nodal axis signifies a return to universal source on a solar, lunar, or more conscious level. The nodal axis is retrograde 90% of the time. It's direct 10% of the time. You need to look at your chart and see whether or not you have that little RX symbol by the nodes. Sometimes you will have an S symbol, and you need to look and see if it's stationary retrograde or stationary direct. That 90% retrograde, for most of us, 90% of souls, it means we find a stronger sense of our destiny earlier in life. Those who only have that 10% direct, 10% of the time, destiny is more established later in life. Now, I am one of those with my nodes direct, and that turned out to be true for me. I was in my early 40s before I really had everything in my metaphysical world come together, take off for me, leap me out onto the national, international scene in both astrology and my other metaphysical work, energetic balancing. They both happened within a 2-year period of each other in my early 40s. The nodal axis transit by sign takes approximately 18 months to travel through each sign of the zodiac. The south node is the soul's ego from the past. It's the accumulation of all the emotional residues from all of our past lives. It represents security because it is already known. It represents karma on all the conscious levels, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual. It is a point of familiarity, both positive and negative, meaning it can be our Achilles heel, and it can also be gifts that we bring through. It's also a point of stagnation, where we are stuck in the past for security reasons. Now, the transiting south node is the leading edge of healing and releasing the past on an egoic conscious level. For instance, south node in Pisces for all of us is releasing old victimization patterns, releasing old distortions around belief systems, releasing barriers to source energy, and allowing us to have that emotional spiritual connection with source and natural spiritual laws and principles again. North node represents the leading edge development of our soul's ego in this life. It will represent insecurity because it's unknown, it's uncharted territory. It represents dharma and our responsibilities moving forward and evolving into the future. It will feel like a sense of destiny and a magnetic pull forward. It is the point of movement in our chart. And the transiting North Node is always that leading edge of developing new egoic skills into the future on a conscious level. For example, transiting North Node in Virgo, all of us are making a concerted effort on a left brain analytical level or way to systematically self-improve, to move our life forward, to learn how to serve others one-on-one to a very broad collective conscious level. Now the nodal axis, the past South Node and future North Node are always in the tension of the present moment, the moon. So you can look at this natally, which we'll do a chart example. You can also look at this with the transiting nodes and the moon in any moment, any hour, any day of your life. And the past is always trying to shape the future in the present moment. And what tends to happen for the vast majority of souls is we project the past forward into the future for security reasons. However, again, that retrograde mean motion of the nodes represents the ability, the potential to progressively leave that past behind and move ourselves forward. Now, a lot of this material I have rehashed from our series on Pluto through the 12 archetypes here. A lot of the archetypes, I readdressed the language to represent it on an egoic, more conscious level. Again, I'm going to move through this just a little faster. You can always go back and review this wherever you want to with the PDFs. What my intent is, as I said, is to give us a little more chart example with this series. And so, again, nodes reversing. The South Node in any angular house or sign is going to represent an evolutionary cycle closing, coming to completion resolution, and via that being a cardinal modality, angular, it is going to emphasize the ability to throw off the old egoic securities. This is true of any of the 4 angular houses: Aries 1st, Cardinal 4th, Libra 7th, Capricorn 10th. We also, in this case, are looking at Aries in the 1st house, representing the element of fire. And so fire signs and houses will also bring through that sense of special destiny to fulfill. And with Aries in the 1st house, that special destiny is on a very instinctive level. Special destiny is keywords related to the element of fire. And all of the fire elements have this energy of freedom. And so what we will find with the South Node in Aries or the 1st house, even as they're finishing up a cycle, they are still very orientated to an emotional default of freedom and independence. Do not fence me in. What it will do is create self-centered, narcissistic ego. Everything revolves around me emotionally. Thank you very much. It will also create needs and desires to initiate and fulfill any experience. This ego classification situation does not want anything to fence it in. gets into anger when that happens. More on this in future slides. And what we will have here with the South Node position is the need to have experience. Because of that fire element and the sense of destiny being instinctive, they have to learn through trial and error. They have to learn through experience. This is their orientation on an egoic level from past lives. And so they come in continuing to want to have a sense of discovery of who they are in each and every moment, and to have the experience and the feedback to learn from it. The ego is very, very orientated to freedom here and discovering who they are. Yes?
I thought we have a question on the board that I thought I could better insert right now just to give some clarity for some associates out there on the call. If a planet would be conjunct the node, if a planet's conjunct the node and is retrograde, does it give a direct, quote unquote, direct effect on the node? I thought I'd let you clarify that before we moved on for this person.
Okay, I need to clarify the question. Okay, you need to repeat the question. Is the node retrograde? Is the planet retrograde?
The planet is, if a planet is conjunct the node and is retrograde, the planet conjunct, let's say the south node or the north node, she's interpreting that with it. The question is, does that give it a direct, I assume that means a stationary direct type archetypal reading effect on the node? And I think I know the answer, but I thought I'd let you clarify that if it makes sense.
I think I'm understanding it. There's several variations that could come through, but in essence, no. Any planetary archetype retrograde is trying to throw off the past. That emphasizes the south node. So the south node wants to cling to the past and throw off the past at the same time. Just think of your own south node and how it gives you security. Yet think about how sometimes you're so bored with it and you're so tired of it creating more karma. So you want to let go of that past. And a planet retrograde conjunct that, you got to redo it again and see if you can let go of whatever the security is. Can you let go of whatever the repetitious karma is? Now, in general, planets conjunct the south node, we'll see in a future slide, are relive, fruition, or a mixture of both. We'll actually see this in examples. So if I may, I'll answer this in more detail when we actually look at some chart example down the road here.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And so with this signature, there's always going to be instinctual attractions to whatever's coming along in the moment. Those of you who have South Node and Aries in the first house, just look at how easily you can get distracted. And then where was I? Where was I? And how easily you can have your best intentions and plans, and that default orientation is to just interrupt and go with the flow with whatever comes your way. And so this is, again, a default egoic or emotional reaction to any stimuli from your environment. I must pursue it because I might become something that I wasn't before. And after a while, what that South Node in Aries in first house starts to realize is, I have no emotional foundation. I'm just emotionally all over the place. I've really got to have a little focus on where I'm going. We also will find that the signature sets up a natural conflict within the ego. Again, they naturally gravitate to freedom, independence, and the right to follow anything that comes at them. But they also then will start to realize what I just said. If I'm continually running around with my head cut off, I don't have any emotional stability. So we will find that this signature will periodically come around and want to cling to something on an emotional level for those security reasons. They'll resist that energy to move forward. They'll resist that energy to let something go. Those details will be found by the sign the South Node's in when it's first house, and by the house the South Node in Aries is in. More on this with example. And we'll also find that we'll create an identity crisis on an egoic level, on a cyclic basis, in varying degrees. And so what will happen here is the ego is wanting to explore, and it loses a sense of self. And so then it has to go back inward. All right? And so we'll look more on this in detail, but basically the ego, oh, I thought, oh geez, okay, hopefully you can't see that. Something got changed on my computer where I get all these news messages. Don't know where that came from. So what is happening here is that there is the push-pull between that North Node wanting to evolve and grow and move forward, and the South Node wanting to be secure. And the implosions can come with when we lose a sense of identity. The implosions can come when we're too egoically attached to a identity that's no longer relevant for us. And so sometimes that need for those new experiences will create insecurity, because that ego says, well, I already know who I am. I'm already comfortable emotionally with this, and I don't know if I want to let go of X, Y, Z and move forward into something else. So there's a push-pull here. Sometimes the ego wants to race forward into the new, and sometimes it can get very resistant to it for emotional security. And sometimes when there is an egoic resistance of change, we can bring up all kinds of levels of emotional frustrations and anger. I don't want to change. It can go both ways here again. It'll go back and forth instinctively with this South Node signature. We'll want to race forward and change in the ways that feel emotionally good, and we'll get angry when we can't forward. And then we'll also have resistance to change when we feel emotionally threatened, and that can make us angry as well. So the anger can be on both sides of the coin, the freedom and the insecurity. And again, it can get intense, it can get violent, it can be projected onto others. North Node in Libra, 7th house. And the universe, via that North Node, 7th house, will provide any limitations when we're too much on the freedom end. It will provide the feedback from others, and it will provide whatever life circumstances we need to either limit the freedom that's racing ahead or to push us ahead and letting go of the past when we're clinging to it too strongly. Now, when we start looking at the North Node here, the evolutionary intent of a Libra 7th house North Node is to progressively lead us into relationships. We cannot egoically or emotionally survive in isolation or on an island. Whenever you see South Node in Aries or first house, you can almost automatically recognize there's a buildup of relationship karma, and it's easier to isolate and defend self, than to move forward in relationships. Relationships are the future, though. And so what we're seeing here is that whole process of emotionally discovering ourselves, actualizing who we think we are and what we're here to do. It cannot happen in isolation. It has to be bounced off. However, as I just said, because we've built up this relationship karma and it hasn't been necessarily easy or fun, it creates what we can call a natural loner type on an egoic level. We have a young man who has a south node in Aries, and it is so much easier for him to be alone in his room. He gets overwhelmed with relationships, and then he has to come back by himself, within himself, find himself, and then somehow, sooner or later, the universe pushes him out there. He wants relationships, but because he's so orientated to himself, it's not always easy to be in relationships, because we, as his parents, surmise that he gets the feedback or he gets rejected because it's all about me, me, me. And so his friends get bored, or they don't want to be with him because it's all about him. And so this isolation that can builds up an identity crisis on an emotional level. Because again, these are souls that have reached a limitation with how far they can evolve emotionally with just themselves all alone. And so these identity crises can manifest then as an instinctive desire to initiate relationships with others who can give them that feedback that helps them learn who they are on an emotional level. They have to emotionally open up to others, whether they want to or not, whether they're attracted or repulsed, as we shall see here. And so with the South Node in this position, the ego can subconsciously attract others who will have a strong effect upon them. It can be a shocking effect in experience, in communications, in feedback, in whatever ways others necessarily have to react to these Aries first house egos. And so what will happen for these particular souls is their ego will be instinctively attracted to or repelled by other people. Sometimes the attractions will easily have a sexual magnetism. We're dealing with Aries first house, which is going to be that sexual instinct to survive and linked to the ruler Mars. Sometimes these attractions may or may not be acted upon. You're going to have to look at the other factors with Aries first house south nodes. In other words, where's Pluto? By sign and house, and you can even add on aspects. You can add on aspects to the nodal axis as well. Sometimes these attractions may or may not be acted upon depending upon the other person's chart. Common situation, sometimes one or both may already be in a committed relationship with someone else, and the situation does not allow them to act upon the attraction. What you would want to look at this as from a karmic perspective is that whatever the attraction is, it must be related back to the primary relationship. Make a note here because I want to, yes?
Another question that would probably be relevant, South Node in Aries first house that came through the board. What can you give a quick discernment between South Node in the first and Pluto in the first for the group, please?
With Pluto, it's going to be on a more unconscious, instinctive level. The soul is attracted to somebody, they get the sexual urge, Pluto, and they want to act on it. On South Node or first house level, or on the Aries or first house South Node level, it's going to be more emotionally conscious. There will be some subconscious energy going on, but the ego is going to be able to recognize it. And the ego can have a little more ability to say yes or no and understand the consequences of acting upon the sexual attraction.
Right.
So Pluto, more unconscious. Ego, even though it's the South Node, it is more conscious. Just look at your own South Node for it.
Kim, I just lost you.
Okay, audio connection says it's restored. I get a message when we disconnect everybody, and so I usually stop talking and ask Leroy to let me know when he can hear me again. And so he ran up the stairs because we operate in two different rooms. And so I'm waiting for him to get back on his computer and tell me that he can.
Yeah,
Okay.
I can hear you now. You're fine, and thank you for everybody out there for your responses on that Q&A board. It really helps when we get immediate feedback to troubleshoot. So I think we can continue.
And whenever the connection is lost, the webinar tries to restore it. So it's really just a matter of being patient. And like I said, I pause myself until I know I'm connected again and move on with more information.
And so I might add, just as a
so the point was, again,
are you
yes?
still? I just wanted to say on this fact that if we ever get lost connections again, just like I'm closing out several more windows here on my computer, that's always the first thing you want to do as a webinar participant. If you do get a lost connection, just kind of release any other open applications immediately and
right.
back. Yeah.
Right. You basically do not want any other applications running, and you got to figure out what changed for me, Mr. IT guy, that is giving me these pop-up news things with noise, because I've deliberately, I always deliberately shut down my internet so I don't get those bings of a new email.
Okay, back to the
All right.
content. We'll do that.
And so what can also happen here with this South Node signature is there can be these instinctual hypnotic attractions. And ego doesn't know why, it just knows it's attracted. And in that same respect, others can be attracted to this South Node signature as well on a very hypnotic basis. And so it works very instinctively. It can be just momentary. Again, pay attention. What was the message? For instance, I like to say, what was the pattern that was attracting you to XYZ person? And can you take that back into the primary relationship if you're in a relationship? Or if you are not in a relationship, can you recognize that pattern and work to fulfill that within yourself? Now, for those of you who are new, in our segment 2 materials, we went into several classes that really spoke to how, as a species, we are meant to learn through the polarity gender. There's a whole big discussion we can have around that. I would refer you to some segment 2 webinars, especially the beginning ones back in 2014 if you'd like more information. And so when they have these instinctive hypnotic attractions, sometimes how long this relationship or attraction lasts matters less. What matters more is why it occurred and what occurred. What did you learn from it? Again, these egos are such natural loners that the universe will bring them a hypnotic attraction to learn from. And so when it comes through, what did you learn? I'm always telling, the Pluto and Libra generation, it's not so much the quantity of the relationship, it's the quality. Are you really learning fairness? This is going to be a lesson for this South Node ego structure. Is there an equality in the giving and the receiving? And so what gets to be learned here with these hypnotic attractions? They do not have to be sexualized. Sometimes you're extremely attracted to somebody who has a body of knowledge that you don't, and they open the door for you and move on. And so these instinctual attractions to another will always create a desire, a need to discover what is that attraction. Why am I attracted to them? This happens again on Pluto, with Pluto in first house or Aries. It'll be more of a subconscious level. The ego, when it really takes some time to self-reflect, especially with the emotions, it can get to what that attraction is easier, faster. Emotions, have it because of the moon. They have a tendency to operate more on a surface level. We can reach it easier than we can when it's the soul. Now, frustration will occur again if any existing circumstances in life do not allow this ego structure to act upon it. Again, let's just say, we can see here, example is being in a relationship with somebody else and honoring commitments. But what if, for instance, there is that instinctual attraction to some new body of knowledge, and you are in a relationship with someone and they want nothing to do with that new agey stuff? When the South Node in Aries or first house is attracted to somebody to learn that, and it creates an argument between them because this South Node wants to instinctively go for it and follow through on a new relationship, and the partner feels threatened by it. We also can have situations where Aries or first house South Node egos may be instinctively repelled by other people. And when that happens, it's almost as if that other person does not exist. Their ego just doesn't want anything to do with them. Again, such a strong sense of self-orientation towards self, their ego will just deny somebody else is there if they get an instinctual repulsion towards them. Sometimes this ego structure will be in a relationship with someone and they'll have a simultaneous attraction-repulsion to them. The attraction wants to follow through, and the repulsion feels threatened on an emotional security level. This may be in an intimate relationship. It may be in a non-intimate, more friendship structure, relative to the squares with Cancer, Capricorn. It could literally be in a familial structure. You could have a parent with the South Node in Aries or the first house, and they could have an attraction-repulsion with their own children. It will set up telling you that there's some type of past life karma involved. You'd have to look at anytime you get this attraction-repulsion dynamic going, you would really want to look at the entire charts of the two people involved, be it intimate, friendship, familial, co-workers, parent, or boss, employee, whatever it is. You would always want to look at both charts that are involved. And so, again, when there is this attraction-repulsion, we have three possible reactions. And again, this is going to relate to those three reactions in regards to evolution. We can have a total rejection of the information or attraction if it's threatening on an emotional or an egoic level, or if that other person feels threatening to us. We can go for it 100% and just dive in, instinctively just open up and go. And we can go back and forth. We can follow through on some of the information, reject other information, follow through on the attraction in some ways, reject it in other ways. Again, the details will be found in the actual charts of the people involved. Now, eventually, this egoic structure is going to realize that it really does need to be in an intimate relationship on a long-term basis, instead of just the intense, brief, emotional, and or sexual encounters. What can happen with the South Node in Aries or the first house, they can be caught up in the conditioning factors and or addiction to the intensity and headiness of when we first are attracted to someone. We've all, read about this kind of stuff that's went on, needing to have that continual excitement on an intense way. The classic thing here would be if we have a male who has South Node in Aries or first house, and perhaps consensus state, not always limited to that, but relative to the patriarchal conditioning, they can get so caught up in the conquest, and it's all about the chase. And once they conquer, once the sexual need has been fulfilled, adios, they're out of there. They're on to the next conquest and building up the karma. So this may or may be part of an equation when you look at this ego structure. You have to, again, take everything from the chart into consideration. But eventually they learn that they need to be in long-term relationships or longer-term relationships. And what they are learning is, again, to be in relationship on an equal basis, and on an equal basis emotionally. They have to give as much as they want to receive. They have to learn to listen to another and what they need emotionally, rather than everybody else always just fulfilling the first house south node's emotional needs. And so in this process of learning how to be with others on an equal basis emotionally, they eventually learn that others are just as important or not important as themselves. Everybody believes the world revolves around them, but the world doesn't revolve around a single person, does it? And so this ego structure is going to tend to experience various kinds of relating difficulties, especially early on in life. For instance, again, we have a 20, soon to be 21-year-old male, and while he's brought a few dates home, we've met a few, we've yet to see a long-term girlfriend. And not because there's a closet, gender issue going on. It just, Leroy and I have joked, we're not too worried about being grandparents because it would require our child to be invested in somebody else more than himself. I don't say that blanket, and again, I just use this as an example, and I am no way meaning to cut my kid down. Actually, it's kind of nice having someone who is not setting up housekeeping this early on. And so there can be various emotional difficulties and confrontations, and they can come on all four levels, not just emotional. They can be physical, mental, and spiritual as well. And again, there's a need in learning how to give to another person, especially emotionally. What is that other person's emotional needs? What will make them happy? And eventually they'll learn that in the process of giving to another, it makes them feel good. And in learning how to listen, Libra 7th house psychology of hearing, and learning how to listen, they can learn how to give to another person as they want to receive, as they want to be given to. And so, in learning how to listen and give to another, especially on emotional levels, own ego is going to learn those evolutionary lessons of relativity and equality. And relativity means, how do I actually relate to how do I actually relate to someone else on a very equal basis? Sometimes this egoic structure may experience the sense of being attacked or misunderstood. And sometimes they're going to experience themselves attacking or misunderstanding others. It's going to help them learn where they themselves are coming from, as well as where others are coming from. In other words, what's the motivations and intentions of another person they're relating to? What are their motivations and intentions? Are they emotionally giving just enough to get what they want out of a situation? Are others doing that to an Aries or first house south node? Sometimes they can be intense confrontations in this manner. In order to recognize this, in order to recognize any egoic manipulations that are taking place either direction, Aries first house south node or the partner they're relating to. And what needs to come out of this is both of them realizing that neither one of them are getting their emotional needs met. And so if the Aries first house south node is, being attacked or misunderstood, they're going to point out to the other person, hey, this doesn't feel good. This doesn't work for me. And vice versa. The other person can do that to them. And what they really want to do is learn how to let go of any of these emotional manipulations in order to feel secure and find that Libra 7th house equality of giving and receiving equally. Now, there are also 3 possible reactions to the North Node ego's intent to learn via relationships. One reaction is that these egos can seek out relationships in which they are the dominant force in the relationship. They want to seek out a partner that they can emotionally manipulate and control in order to feel secure and maintain their freedom. And it's an unequal situation, and it will ensure sooner or later a separation. Again, it allows them to maintain that freedom, but it doesn't meet that egoic need of an equal relationship. And sometimes within this, they are so fearful of losing their freedom, they're so fearful of being dominated and controlled, that they can reject relationships altogether. Just as they get demanding of others, they can feel very afraid of others doing that to them. So they just don't even want to go near relationships. It can also sometimes cause them, again, to have brief, intense encounters, and there's never an ability to sustain any quantity to the relationship until they work through their own fears, their own emotional insecurities around this whole dynamic. And it will eventually create that identity crisis over whether or not to be in a relationship because they're lonely. It's reminding me of a nephew of mine whose birthday was yesterday, and he's in his early 20s, and he has Moon in Aries. Square the nodes, Cancer, Capricorn. I don't remember which one is the resolution node. Oh, hold on a second. The resolution node is going to be the North node in Capricorn. Yes. I don't remember the houses, but again, early 20s. He's an 8th house Pluto in Scorpio, so I'm not remembering rising sign. I don't have his chart, but my point is that he has no friends. He lives in relative isolation in my sister's basement, and we're watching him as time goes by, slowly reaching out to us as family and slowly starting to participate in some of our familial get-togethers because he's so lonely, because he's so isolated, and he's starting to recognize this isn't normal. The second reaction is this ego structure can seek out a relationship in which they are dominated by the other person. It's also an unequal situation, and just like within a first house Pluto, for this egoic structure, it can also be an extreme desire to return to source. It can also be recognizing some old karmic patterns in which they have some subconscious guilt and need to atone. They can recognize that they need to atone for old relationship situations where in past lives they were overly egocentric and manipulative of others. And so now they are allowing themselves to be put in that type of a situation in order to heal the karma. And sooner or later, when the karma is healed, they will feel on an egoic or emotional level that they're done. They've paid it off, and the relationship either has to change or they ask for their freedom or demand their freedom. And when they're in this type of a situation, what will also happen, though, is the partners that they have this karma with, they're going to compulsively want to dominate. They're going to want to confront and control the Aries first house South Node ego's weak areas. And so the partner who's doing the dominating is always going to present themselves in such a way that this South Node, first house South Node ego structure, you need me, you won't make it. You need me or you're going to be alone the rest of your life. They will take this karmic residue on emotional levels. And what we have to be careful of is the partner exploiting it, and sending the karma down the road. Another lifetime, another lifetime, another lifetime. And so, the third reaction then is to continue to work towards relationships that have the potential for equality in giving and receiving. Eventually down the line, the Aries first house South Node egoic structure is going to look for relationships or evolve into relationships in which each person is helping the other evolve and grow emotionally in open and non-defensive ways. And each partner will allow the other to have a sense of freedom and independence and do whatever it is they want to do. And each of them will be committed to the other person as well as being committed to the relationship. They learn how to leave that south node behind or temper it and really evolve to develop an egoic structure that is orientated to and participating in relationship. They will also learn how to open up and allow the relationship to evolve, to allow it to change however it needs to as time goes by. Now, as they evolve into this third reaction, as they continue to evolve and grow, it doesn't mean that this egoic structure lets go of its need for freedom. It means they learn how to balance that need for freedom with the need for relationship. They learn that it is not an either-or situation. The egoic future, and that's evolutionary intent, is to realize both needs. Freedom and commitment are necessary and must be developed emotionally. They've got to have their emotional freedom and they've got to build their emotional commitment. Both must be understood and developed. And then they will also allow that in the partner. And the partner allows that with them. And then both parties evolve and grow. And so what happens then is they have to learn to recognize on an instinctive emotional level when they have a need to be alone and when they have a need to be with someone. And it's not going to be something that we can necessarily define as I get to be alone on Wednesday nights and every Friday night we have a date night. It's not going to operate on a level in which it is clearly defined. There can be maybe some type of egoic structure to that in some way, but that's not the main way it's going to operate. The emotions are just going to instinctively come up. I need to go in my room. I need to go in my man cave. I need to go in the craft room for a moment and process through some things. And then once they do, they come out and emote that, relate that to the partner. And so, for the South Node in Aries or first house, they must understand this, they must honor it as best as they can, and they must explain this to the partner as well as possible so that the partner honors that within them, and then vice versa. This egoic structure has to learn to honor the partner when they want to instinctively be alone. And if this is not honored on an instinctive emotional level, then again, you have loss of perspective, you have emotional distortions, you have misinformation and understandings, you misidentify the cause of the problem. It leads into that whole identity crisis again. And so if we learn to follow that natural emotional rhythm, I need to be alone, I want to be with you, then we can minimize these types of reactions. Now, the individualizing impulses will manifest instinctively. They may not emotionally know why. They may not know what it is they want to do. They just need to follow it through. And emotional clarity will come after the actions. We also can have egoic structures in which these souls can feel less than others at what's happening in their world, at how they feel emotionally and what they need emotionally. Again, until they can have emotional experience, they may not know what's going on for them. And, it can require a pretty open-minded partner to allow them to just have all these emotional experiences to learn more about themselves. On a negative basis, this egoic structure can adopt everyone else's beliefs, values, and emotions. And then it can lead to rejecting them because it just doesn't feel right. And it leads them back into that cave all over again, back to the isolation in order to find out who they are, until eventually they're so emotionally lonely, it's time to reach out to relationships. And they can go round and round and round in this, compromising on themselves emotionally until they've got to reject it. And then being so emotionally isolated, they jump right back in yet again without taking time to see who it is they're relating to and do they relate on an emotional level. And then they also have to learn that comparing themselves to another really isn't healthy. And they need to seek out those who encourage them to be themselves, not try to control or manipulate them. On a positive level, this egoic structure can manifest the courage and will to be different. And if they find that emotional courage and will to do that, then they can be natural leaders. And they can serve as examples for others on how to just instinctively follow through emotionally, discover who they are and what they're meant to do. And so they will have lessons of balancing their needs with those around them. And again, learning to listen allows them to give as others need, and it allows others to have the courage to instinctively break free, discover who they are in new ways. And this egoic structure can be encouraging of that with other people. All right, so now I'm very quickly going to just go through these slides. I'm not going to explain them. I want to just make sure that we move into some chart examples here. So here is the Trinity of the Past, natal Pluto sign house, where we gravitate to on unconscious levels, security reasons, how many Pluto aspects, meaning how much is the soul intending to evolve. Is Pluto retrograde? Are they intensifying, throwing off the past? The natal south node by house sign aspects is the ego the soul developed in the past for emotional reasons that allowed that prior karmic dynamic of Pluto to be actualized. And the number of south node aspects will show us how active that node was in the past. And again, if you want more detail on this whole structure, you can go to the Segment 1 webinars in early 2014 when we reviewed all of this. And so we also then will look at the ruler of the South Node by sign and house. And one of the threads in the Segment 1 Facebook recently asked this particular question: do we consider that planetary ruler of the South Node by sign and house? And the answer is yes. And this is why I wrote both out and emphasized them. Because even though Jeffrey Wolf Green's teachings would state this periodically, his Pluto 1 examples would only use South Node by sign. And after my 30 years of studying EA, the South Node by house is just as dynamic and just as important. Every planetary archetype has a dual nature, sign, and house, and you must blend both to get that planet or that point in space real archetype. Now, evolutionary intent, trinity of the future. This is the polarity point of Pluto. By sign, generation, house, individual. Every aspect Pluto makes, there's going to be a corresponding similar number of aspects with the Pluto polarity point to establish that evolutionary pace. The North Node is, again, the ego we're striving to create in order to allow the evolutionary intent Pluto polarity point to be actualized. Number of aspects, how active this is on an egoic emotional level. Same thing with the rulers of the North Node, sign and house, to get additional detail of how we are emotionally striving to move forward. And in this case, the two examples we're going to use, we have planets conjunct the South Node. Again, as we said, relive, fruition, both of those to be one, to have only a relive situation rare, to have only a fruition situation rare. The mixture of the two is by far the most common. And when planets are conjunct the North Node, that planetary archetype is being pulled, pushed into the future on an emotional level. When we have planets or Pluto square the nodes, we have the skipped nodes. Both nodes were active in the past and the future. And the resolution node is the node that last passed over the planet. You start with the node, you move clockwise, and that's the resolution node. We don't have that example today. We'll see that in future charts. And so our first example, and oh good, I brought it in. Leroy, if you can see if our first chart example is here for the tape, March 8, 1977, 7:52 a.m., Aberdeen, South Dakota, my home state. This volunteer feels that she is unsure, feels individuated, raised as a Lutheran, abusive and difficult relationship with mother, good relationship with father, both parents still alive, no children, middle class, works in a hospital lab, would like to change careers, interested in deep memory processing, perhaps hospice, no marriages, no major relationships. Okay. I can hear the background noises, so I think I have volunteer number 1 on. Hi
Yep,
there.
I'm here. Hi. Oh, sorry.
Oh.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. Perhaps you can move puppy somewhere so we can hear you.
I will. Hold on 1 second, okay?
Okay, will do. While she's gone, as you can see here, we have Pluto, Libra, 7th house, retrograde. So here's where the soul is coming from. And the South Node is 24 degrees Aries. You see the S here? That means it probably, I didn't look this up. I had drawn the chart up 2 different ways, and one way has it retrograde. So I'm going to venture to guess that this might be stationary retrograde. I apologize for that. I will make sure that I look this up in future ones. Hi, volunteer.
Hi. Yes.
I was just pointing out your 7th house Pluto in Libra retrograde and the South Node structure. I don't know how far along you are in your astrological studies to know whether this S is stationary retrograde or stationary direct. That is something we may want to, you may want to explore down the road. I was telling students, apologies, that I did not check that detail out. I will make sure I do in future classes.
No, I
Ruler.
believe. Oh, I'm sorry. I
Go ahead.
actually
No,
believe
you
it
go ahead.
is. I believe it is stationary direct. Even
Okay,
though
there we
it's
go.
different than the usual. Yep.
There we go. So that's going to then lend you to that part of the 10% of the time where it feels like it's taken till midlife or later in life to really find what your sense of emotional destiny and purpose. And I say that not because it's first house or Aries. I say that entirely because, again, when nodes are direct, um, it takes us longer to get a sense of self. That will add on to sometimes your signature right here. For the tape, I also want to say I want to recognize that the ruler of the North Node by sign and house is conjunct the South Node, bringing in more relive fruition stuff. But we also have a planet conjunct North Node, the Moon. Libra 7th house conjunct that North Node. Now the North Node is new phase to the Moon, again moving backwards. The South Node is new phase to Chiron, and it is balsamic to Venus. Now, I'm going to be able to rattle off a lot of stuff. I would just like to hear from you for a couple of moments, as much of the slides as you've been able to check in with. Was there anything specific in class that was just really jumping out at you, or raising the light bulb moments, I guess? What were you processing through? How were you reacting, South Node Aries, first house, as we were going
Well,
through this?
um, I think it was a little mixed for me. Because sometimes I really relate to the Aries South Node, and then sometimes I really don't. Um, I guess I had a really difficult relationship with my mother, and had a really, just a lot of self-esteem issues growing up. So I just didn't, really want to enter into relationships because they were just, I related to that idea of, relationships being really difficult and hurtful, and so not really wanting to be in them. Um, Although I've, always maintained relationships with friends, and I sometimes have a tendency to give too much to people because that's some of the feedback that I've been getting lately that I don't take. So it's kind of a jumble, kind of a mix of the two. Definitely
If
there's the Aries South Node, but then sometimes
if I
there's like a Libra South Node.
Well, if I may,
Yeah.
have you ever dated anyone over a period of time? Have you ever lived with anyone?
No, no, I really haven't. Just very casual dating. I just recently had a really close friendship with a man that did get a little, um, we kind of wanted to take it into the romance area, but it never happened.
Who
So no, I
wanted
haven't
to?
really. What's that?
Who wanted to take it into romance?
My friend, my close um, male friend, but
And you didn't because
um, I don't think I was ever really romantically attracted to him. And I think I knew he was, from the get-go, but I really wanted a friendship with him. Um, so,
Thank you. I appreciate you being willing to share. Um, So of course, let's just start through with Pluto the soul. Obviously, this double signature of Libra and seventh house. Again, lifetimes of relationship enmeshment, codependency of some sort. All right. So this is what can be operating on somewhat of a deeper level. Now, relative to this ego structure over here, it's almost like there's a lifetime reaction going on to these soul lifetimes of being so enmeshed with others that, again, egoically, there's a fear of losing self if I really do take relationships into intimacy. You can see your soul's evolutionary intent is to develop your independence, is to develop your sense of self. And yet, when we look at this egoic structure right here, okay, this can tell us that there's still relationship wounding because we're so orientated towards me, myself, and I. Now, there's several things I want to say because I have to speak linearly, if that's okay. And you're always welcome to ask questions, and you're always welcome to interrupt, all right?
Sure.
With this ruler of the North Node by sign and house conjunct the South Node, it tells us, though, there are continuing lessons in learning to develop your own self-reliance. Venus, self-reliance, Aries, first house, and to do it within yourself. So I'm not going to be the one to play authority and say, well, that means this entire lifetime, or that means up to XYZ age. We know that in the broad scheme of things, because our species has two genders, and we learn through relativity, there are continuing lessons for you in relationship. But it will be for you to discern within yourself when you feel emotionally healed and sustaining, that you are ready to then partake emotionally with others. All right? And it may be there for you to do it on a more casual or friendship level until you really feel that sense of emotional equilibrium. You're being pulled towards relationships emotionally, but they are only going to work to the degree that, again, you feel emotionally self-reliant. Is that making sense for you?
Definitely, yes.
And
Yeah.
you would
No,
agree?
yeah, I was just, oh, sorry. I was just gonna say the more I work on myself and the more I learn to love myself, the easier relationships do get, and the more
Mm-hmm.
that I do want to be in them, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, the other thing that's going on within you is you look at this, you have ruler of the North Node by sign and house opposite the moon. So this comes into play as well. This can then also tell us, because to your relative to your own environmental conditioning factors, that some of your relationship karma is not just with intimate partners, Libra seventh house. Like you said, it's with mother. Was mother very controlling and dominating?
Very, very, yes.
And how is relationship with mother today?
Um, it's civil. She has done some therapy on her own, and she's gotten better. She's definitely um, the dynamics have changed, but I don't think we'll ever have a great relationship. We're very different too. So we still have some problems to work out.
Are you
Yeah.
are you an
Oh,
only child?
no, I have an older brother also. Mhm.
How is relationship with him?
Um, it's okay. We're not super close. He, um, I don't know. It's complicated. I don't think he really understood um, the dynamics that went on with me and my mom, and he had a tendency to blame me a little bit, So there's some, I still have a little bit of hurt that came through him too. But and I'm just very different from my family in general. They're just my brothers,
Mm.
you know, yeah, we just have a hard time understanding each other, I think.
How does brother get
Yeah.
along with how does brother get along with mom?
Fine. Like um, I think he kind of, um, he tolerates her definitely a lot better than I do. He kind of goes along with her a lot more, but then she never really, really was as abusive and controlling with him. So I think their relationship was better growing up. So you know, he tolerates her much better, I think. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yeah.
What I am sensing is that even though there is going to be through this Uranus signature square to Saturn here in
Mhm.
Leo fifth, both of these retrograde, even though there's going to be a history and build up of karma and emotional hurt and betrayals of trust, etc., in relationships, okay? That again still will be there in needing to be addressed by your soul at some point. I'm almost sensing that it was for you to come through and move through some of this familial karma and really be working to heal it and break free from the familial enmeshments
Mhm.
and really find yourself. And
Right.
so it's continuing to relate to the family. It's
Right.
not to isolate yourself from the family. It is to isolate, it's to remove yourself from the familial environment if the abuse is continuing, be it of
Mhm.
any way, emotional especially, emotional or verbal, because Mercury, okay, the North Node is a waxing sesquisquadrate to Mercury. The South Node is a waning semi-square to Mercury. So here's the communication issues. Here's the feeling
Mhm.
misunderstood in
Mhm.
communications. And
Sure.
so you do need to remove yourself from the familial environment if there's verbal or emotional abuse. But it is to work through finding that sense of yourself in the familial environment. And as you heal that, then I think your next step will lead you forward in time to then address the wounds around intimacy. All
Mhm.
right? And again, for me, what I would say is a lot of the timing is going to be there for you to discern. Whether it is in this lifetime that you work to heal in intimate relationships, or whether you feel most of the lifetime is healing self and familial environment. As you can see here, if I may, um, um, uh, um, Uranus, of course, has been getting ready to go over Venus 3 times. It'll go
Mhm.
over South Node next year. Pluto in a few years will be squaring all of this.
Yep.
And so there is going to be some relationship energy on the horizon, honey.
Yes. Yep.
And Uranus has got to be opening you up here with
Mhm.
Venus to really finding that inner strength, inner well-being, sense of self. And it's going to come across this south node, and you may have only one hit with it because it goes retrograde at 24:30 this summer. So Uranus may only have one passage over the south node. If so, hallelujah. But what you would want to be looking at this Uranus passage of here is, again, opening up your courage,
Mhm.
opening up that sense of self so that you can move forward here in relationships. It's possible that something may come along with mom in your world, you know, as all of us do with parents who are aging. Sometimes it's a health issue. Maybe there's a
Mhm.
relationship crisis with mom and dad going on. Something happens there that catapults you back into the familial environment to address things. And of course, for your soul up here with transiting Pluto and coming off of the first quarter square, taking charge of your life, taking charge of your life. And I would also say, if I may, again, while we're looking at an egoic structure here that needs to move into relationships, it has to be related to where the soul's coming from. And the host sensitivity of these two planets in Pisces, I would also say that you would really want to be strengthening your relationship with Source, you
Mhm.
know, the inner divinity, the inner, even the inner lover, if you would want to be doing that. And that's going to give you more and more and more courage to step out of the
Mhm.
isolation and into relationships. And oh, by the way, if I may, this is just popping through. Um, I was raised on a farm, and we had a neighbor a mile down the road who lived with his mother. And when the weather was bad, he was a bachelor. And when the weather was bad, the school bus would always drop my sister and I off at their house. So I got to know his mother and this gentleman. And I've mentioned this before, I think on public calls, I don't know for sure. Um, I want to say that this neighbor of ours, I want to say he married for the first time, and it was either his late 70s or 80s. Married for the first time.
Mhm.
And he outlived his wife, and he finally passed away a year or two ago, I think at the age of 99 or something like that. So I'm just
Wow.
sharing this for you.
Mhm.
Again, I am fond of saying soul doesn't give a damn what your chronological age is, okay,
Mm,
honey?
yeah.
So
Yes, thanks.
at some point you feel comfortable enough within yourself that you are willing to emotionally risk evolving in relationships. And then
Mhm.
that's going to evolve this natal Pluto as well, so that you move out of the enmeshment, you move out of the imbalances in giving and receiving.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely relate to that. In fact, Uranus going through my first house has been really positive so far.
Good.
It's given me kind of the courage to stand up to my parents. Well, right now, our argument right now is with religion because they still think that I should be a Lutheran and going to church. And I've just recently I had a really hard time admitting that I haven't been going to church, for I'm sure about 10 or 15 years now. Um, and, developing my own spirituality. And that's been really, really difficult admitting that to them.
Yeah.
Because,
Speaking up.
they go back into that control again because now my mom's, you know, every Sunday they call and say, "Have you gone to church?" And um, I just kind of get back into that control that happened when I was little, and I just want to, um, not stand up to them again. But, slowly I've been letting them know that, this is not my religion and this is not what I want to do. And I think that's been good for me. So
Congratulations.
thank you.
Transiting Neptune over your Mercury.
Mhm.
and Mercury having this, uncomfortable relationship with the nodal axis, okay? So
Mhm.
how can I remain true to myself? How can I find my voice and speak up through my relationships? And
Mhm.
so congratulations. And I would say that you could even be more direct with your parents if you felt comfortable enough.
Yeah. Yep.
And then hold the healthy boundaries. Hold the
Yeah.
healthy boundaries with them if they can't be respectful.
Yeah. Yep. It's getting there for sure, I think. Just trying to maintain, yeah, I feel that needing to maintain a relationship with them because, on the one hand, sometimes I just want to just break off from them completely, but then, trying to, yeah, it's really just about trying to maintain relationships with them, but yet letting them know who I am and getting them to accept that. And yeah, so.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I would say especially as you're looking at this Neptune transit, finding that emotional courage when they ask if you went to church today.
Mhm.
If you have any spiritual practices that you participate in, it'd be
Mhm.
literally asking them if they'd like to participate in yours.
Right.
And if not, I think we need to agree to disagree.
Right.
See
Yes.
how that North Node is asking for equality
Right. Yes.
through that?
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Mhm.
Yep. Those are the ways that your North Node in Libra is meant to be practicing,
Mm.
especially with communications.
Yes.
All right. Any questions for me as I'm a little honoring of time here?
No, that
Any,
was great. Thanks so much. Yep.
any questions from the board, Leroy?
No, we're free to move on.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, volunteer. And we're going to mute you. And as I go to the next chart here, we'll see if we have volunteer number 2. Was she able to make my rescheduled call? November 13th, 1984, 6:45 a.m., Hardisty, Alberta, Canada. 9 degrees Scorpio rising. Here's Pluto, 3 degrees Scorpio in the 12th house. In this case, we have a South Node first house. It's in Scorpio, 27 degrees. It is balsamic, the Sun in Scorpio at 21. Balsamic Saturn at 19 Scorpio. South Node is new phase Mercury at 10 and new phase Uranus at 12. So you can see we have 4 planets here in the first house in addition to that South Node in the first. North Node's up here in the 7th. And so we're going to have 2 rulers here. One ruler is going to be the soul itself, Pluto, Scorpio, and South Node in the first. Ruler Mars over here at 28 degrees Capricorn, and I'm talking to myself because I'm slowing down because I'm realizing the 2 rulers of the South Node, Mars and Pluto, are in a crescent phase square to each other. One ruler of the North Node by both sign and house, and that's Venus over here. Oh, very, very tight balsamic conjunction to Neptune. And so this person, female, considers herself third individuated, maybe moving towards first. No strict upbringing, curious from a young age about religion and spirituality. Um, Parents still married, relationship between them is rocky, not much love, physical contact, mom mean to father, embarrasses him publicly. Another one where mom and her did not get along, rebelled against mom, always closer to dad. That's not always true with South Node and Aries, so don't take it as gospel with two charts here. This person had some drug, alcohol, sex addictions when puberty hit. Lower middle class until teens. Dad started making more money. Spoiled, according to mother then. Mom never worked. Dad thought she should. The whole situations around money and work distorted from the family. Relies on her partner a lot for financial stability. Her main job, homeschooling 2 children, many sexual partners, young age, pregnancy 17, still with the father of the child 14 years later. That relationship has been evolving into a better and better place over their time together. So do I have a volunteer who is able to make it?
Yes. Hi, Kimmery. Can you hear me?
Hi. Yes, I can hear you very well, sweetie. Thank you for being able to adjust your schedule.
Great.
So same thing for you if you've been listening. As we've kind of went over some of today's materials and this first chart example, what's just been striking you the most on a personal level?
Well, everything. Actually, this was quite an eye-opener for me. I'm fairly new to this, especially evolutionary astrology. So I was just going over my son's chart, and he's the house Pluto and Pluto Soul. And so as I was doing that, I thought, it sounds a lot like me. Like all that stuff for the Pluto Soul in the first house sounds a lot like me. So a lot of things, but mostly, I guess I would say like when you started with the hypnotic attraction, I've had a lot of that even though I've been in a relationship for 14 years. So, and recently it's coming up where I'm certain people that are on a similar path, and my part, he's not so much. I'm learning to be in a relationship with someone, change them, try and control them. So, something that really was hypnotic attraction recently. Growth in our relationship has stayed. So that was one big one, and then also the familial attraction compulsion thing came up for me, and this one's difficult. It's always hard to admit type of thing, but with my own child, actually, my daughter, happens to be a lot like me. This was my firstborn, one that I became pregnant with at 17. She triggers me like no one else, and I love her like the world. But there's also, that would be considered a repulsion. There's this dynamic between us that's just crazy. Like there are days where I'm just triggered by her. So that's what you mean by attraction repulsion?
Yes.
Or
Because when you first came on and said hello, you were very clear, and now as I'm listening to you, there's a lot of tinniness. But in really listening, I think I have picked up on everything pretty well here. Do you hear me okay when I speak?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to assume that everybody's hearing me okay, and I really thank you for the rest of the little input that you just added right now. I made some quick notes, and so if it's okay, I'm just going to rattle some things off based upon what you said, and hopefully it's going to be helpful for you and everybody else. Okay?
Okay, sure. Thank you.
Oh, you're most welcome, honey. And so let's just look at the fact that we've got the Pluto and Scorpio generation. We're coming from that. I sometimes will call this generation a codependency generation, and they really need to learn those Taurian self-reliance lessons. This also is a generation power over, power under, and when you really can stand in your own sense of self-reliance, then you can go back to that Libra and really hold that equality. And this also is, as we know with this generation, these are souls that have to really look at their whole desire nature and what moves me forward versus what holds me back for security reasons, and where do I create the cataclysms then in order to evolve and grow. Now, with 12th house Plutos or Pisces souls, these are such sensitive souls, and they have such lessons in learning how to ground themselves on planet Earth and really walk on planet Earth and physically be here on planet Earth. We have a double water signature on the soul level, and the Pluto polarity point is a double Earth signature. Being in the world and working in the world and functioning in the world and just operating in the world right here. And so that's the soul nature that's coming through. And the other thing with Pisces souls is learning to honor when they need to recharge their batteries and learning to honor when they need to get up off the couch and again, be active in the world. Now, from that soul nature, let's add on this egoic structure right here. Anytime I see South nodes in first house Scorpio, this could even be a South node in Scorpio Aries, the two symbols interacting with each other. Again, there's a lot of defensiveness that will come in here, especially emotional defensiveness. South node, emotional ego from the past. Scorpio, I've had betrayals of trust, which means this first house energy has to turn very defensive. I've got to protect myself before anybody else is going to hurt me. This is what's going to be operating on a little bit more of a conscious level. And underneath that is all of this sensitivity here that feels that they could just emotionally lose it. And they've really got to develop that relationship with source energy in order to have more emotional empowerment to then move over here to this self-reliance, being in the world, I'm okay, I can breathe, I can relax rather than being on edge. And then this egoic structure can start to calm down rather than be so defensive. So we have almost two signatures here, the soul and its ego coming from Scorpio, codependencies, and the soul's intent and the evolving ego, both needing to learn how to become comfortable in their own skin and take charge of their own lives in every way. Self-reliance, when it relates to Taurus and second house, is physical, emotional, mental, spiritual. It's all four levels. Now, we bring in these different signatures here, but especially the fact that the South Node's balsamic, the sun. Here is the relive, here's the fruition. This is telling me that we have someone who has had lifetimes of isolation, lifetimes of a lot of almost emotional sexual exploration, and especially from her own understanding. She's literally had to go out there and explore sexually in order to get the feedback on who she is and who she wants to be. Now, I'll add some things in here, but let's look at the fact that, first of all, one of the things you stated, and again, this is new to some of the EA methods. It felt like it was describing your son who has a first house Pluto. The soul is going to operate that way very instinctively. He's going to do everything we've described here. It's going to sound like your son because it's where his soul is coming from. And especially when we're younger, earlier on, that natal Pluto house signature is just how we instinctively operate. And then as time goes by, again, we start to recognize that ego. And as evolutionary astrologers, we then learn to develop our abilities to have the difference between the soul and its ego. And while both can operate pretty subconsciously and unconsciously, we learn to make both of them more and more conscious because the language of EA allows us to do that. And so this is why sometimes as we're studying EA, we can have some confusion that'll come around through this because we're learning our soul, we're learning our ego, we're learning to operate those again more and more consciously because we have the shortcut of the language. However, when you go to study other charts, you really can use then this language of Pluto soul and ego nodal axis to understand what's deeper underneath. Again, what's underneath here is all this sensitivity, and I don't know if I always want to be here. While it's in Scorpio, we'll have that defensiveness. We might have some of the obsessive compulsive stuff and the betrayals. And it will relate because these signatures are the same. On the egoic level, this is going to be more conscious. And what's going to really start to come through? This first house defensiveness. And so, as the soul, again, goes back and really develops meaning in life, relationship with source as it's individuating, spirituating, that will calm this down. And then any of the relationship relives, Sun conjunct South Node, are moved through in a much more mature manner. And any areas of fruition that really call for leadership, stepping into your own sense of self, stepping into your own power then will come through easier. And this will help calm down this deep sense of vulnerability that comes through here. 12th house Pluto souls, Pisces souls, also, I mean, again, they're so sensitized. They feel like the entire world can be coming at them sometimes. That's why they have to learn healthy boundaries. And this can be, the Scorpio signature can be a positive for that. And so hopefully I'm answering a little bit of soul and ego again for everybody. And we're going to go through this 12 months to really help us with this one with chart example, okay? And so it's kind of hopefully answering some of the sun with the first house Pluto. The hypnotic attractions, the biggest thing that I want to say that comes through here for you in this one is when you study EA principles in natural law, when we have an exchange of sexuality with someone, we have an exchange of karma. And so one of the things that you really want to look at in these hypnotic attractions that will come through, do I really want that person's karma? And that's going to help this egoic structure become a little calmer and hold some healthier boundaries with whether or not I want to exchange anything like that with them. I'm not saying you've done that. I'm saying this is a generic thing when this energy exists. Now, the other thing that's going to be going on here when you have the hypnotic attractions, it will describe what is missing in the primary relationship. And the best way to minimize the karma is to take whatever that attracting pattern is and try to address it in the primary relationship. And if you make that sincere effort, and then partner is either unwilling or unable to evolve enough for you to feel fulfilled and minimize the attractions, it's possible you are meant to move on. Now again, that's not an absolute, but it is for you to find enough inner security within yourself emotionally that you learn how to have very healthy boundaries in relationships. It's coming off of a 12th house Pluto lesson, and it's also coming with this North Node right here, okay? Helping you understand yes and no in relationships. Do I give or do I not give? I have a healthy enough egoic structure that I'm building here that I am learning to, ruler of this North Node, I'm learning to really be honest with myself. Venus, balsamic Neptune, confusion. This is a signature of really returning to natural law. Sag, second house is part of nature, earth, okay? And because Neptune rules the soul by house, all right? And you've got this sixth house in Taurus polarity point. You have a North Node in Taurus polarity point. This return to natural law is really going to help you calm down the hypnotic attractions because you're learning to meet these needs yourself. The whole self-reliance thing includes self-sex. I don't care how good your marriage is. Okay? All right? That's just part of natural law. And it then also helps you open up. And here's Jupiter new phase. Even though Venus is balsamic, both deep unconscious beliefs and conscious beliefs, this is part of the developing ego here. And this is really returning to natural spiritual laws and principles to such a degree that your whole egoic structure is allowed to blossom and have a sense of self. And I can be in this world as a spiritual being walking planet Earth. And then this whole defensiveness, you get too close to me and I'm going to fillet you a new one. You know, that old part of yourself that would just pick up the sword and I'm going to get you before you get me. Or that part of yourself that, you know, again, through your own soul's betrayals of trust in relationships and in natural law, where you just, you know, it's possible that you have some soul naturing within you, that there were time periods where you would just literally go hedonistic and you would have no moral compass or spiritual guidance in who to be intimate with and who not to be intimate with. So you're going to have these relives of these karma mates coming along to heal that type of energy. And your own soul going, I want spiritual mates, not just sex. All right, making sense? And then,
Yes, absolutely.
okay, and then as we look through that attract repel again, it's not just the Pluto Leos that introduced us to karma kids and karma children. they just kind of opened that door, just like they opened the door from the Pluto and Cancers till death us do part. And then the Pluto and Leos made divorce a household name, and that's how the karma kids start to come about. Evolution keeps happening each generation forward. The Pluto and Scorpios are going to have more than just sexual karma or intimate karma. The Pluto and Scorpio generations are going to have intimacy karma. And intimacy involves our family of origin. Intimacy can be non-sexual. And because you have South Node in 1st and North Node in 7th, with squares to the 4th, 10th, it can bring in the familial environment. Okay? Now, we don't have your daughter's chart, but just all of that generically describes that. In addition, the fact that you have Moon in Cancer.
Can I just add?
Yes, go.
I'm just going to add something interesting is that my daughter has she's a 4th house Pluto soul, and she's also got her South Node in the 4th house as well, North Node 10th.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and do you remember what's the Pluto sign? Is she Pluto? She was your oldest, so
one second. Yeah, she's actually Sag, so hers is Pluto 4th house Sagittarius, and her South Node is Sagittarius.
Are they conjunct? How far? What degrees? What number of degrees?
50 degrees Pluto, 15 degrees Pluto, and 9 degrees South Node.
So that means the South Node is conjunct Pluto, okay? And the South Node is new phase Pluto. It's new phase Pluto. And so she may have had this signature in the most recent past life, but, just those signatures right there, we're combining Sag and Cancer, all right? This is someone who is here to discover her emotional truth and stop blaming everybody else. And she's got to relive on I'm the victim and it's all your fault. And she wants to manipulate the truth, Sag. And if you look, your Mercury Uranus is sandwiched right in there. So you guys go back several lifetimes as parent and child, and it's quite possible that you have a lineage with each other of betraying and hurting each other. And so here you are back in this familial relationship in order to heal it. Okay? And so
that sounds really. Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I just wanted to add, sorry for the troubles here. I wanted to add that that's actually really, really helpful. And this time I just wanted to point out too that we really come a long way from where we may have been in the past lives, and even in the beginning we've come leaps and bounds. So I'm pretty happy with where things are headed.
Good for you. Good for you. Because the biggest thing for you is going to be to calm down this defensiveness. Okay? Scorpio can become very defensive whenever it feels emotionally insecure or emotionally threatened. And you add that on to the 1st house South Node, you have a double signature here of defensiveness. And you could also possibly
She is also a Scorpio herself.
There we go. You could also have a signature of strike first before they hurt me. And so the more that you can understand, and again, reach for your own truth, reach for your own understandings of natural laws and principles with these 4 planets in Sag in this 12th house Pisces, really being able to analyze what's real versus going off the deep end emotionally. This will then calm this down, and it'll help you, again, help you really get into your body and be at peace in your body, and kind of almost like slow down and be solid in your body and be able to walk through all these relationships without feeling so whipsawed, especially by those that are closest to you. Okay? Okay, making sense. And then, of course, what I had wanted to say with the moon signature here, Cancer, 8th house, here's emotional karma in the family of origin, whether it's the family she was born into, mother, she signified that, and the family she created, her own daughter with her as a mother. So here is all of this energy that's in need of healing. The nice thing is that it's a trine. Okay, the south node is a waning trine, last quarter trine, or moving into that with this moon. So there's an ability to understand all of this emotionally. And as she's getting all that and healing her own emotional woundedness and creating her own emotional self-reliance, this waxing sextile of the north node then also calms down. Would you feel that you agree with this need to breathe, calm down, relax sometimes? Or do you just feel that you're just a lot of...
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. That's kind of what I'm picking up on.
Absolutely. I'm nervous right now.
Well, it's nothing like being on the spotlight.
No.
We all get that way when it's our chart being volunteered.
Right, right.
So I need to be honoring of time. Hopefully, this was helpful enough in the midst of everything. Questions for me briefly?
No, I think that's about everything. I thank you very much for this. This was really wonderful and a really great experience. So thank you.
Oh, you're most welcome. I just really want to thank both sets of volunteers in this case of being really willing to come forward and be helpful for us in this way. Leroy, I'm going to check in with you. Do I have any questions from the board on anything?
No, Kim, we're good.
All right, I will ponder Mars-Pluto retrograde with Mercury on whether I'm going to continue and just work my way through the zodiac, or whether I feel I should back up and go to Pisces and reverse backwards. I'll let everybody know on that. As you can see in the class next month on your board, regardless of what our subject matter is going to be. And I just finished the Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius Scorpio. If any of you are interested, it is
Mars,
up on our Mars retrograde, thank you. It's up on our forecasting webinars page of the website. And of course, you are all welcome to join in if you would like next week, Monday night, on our free Mercury retrograde in Taurus class. Thank you, everyone, for being able to go a few minutes over. I will see you next month.